Hello everyone, my name is Brian, but you can call me the Bugler, and today we're going to be performing a breakdown and analysis for the Winter's Guile Warlock's exotic arm pieces. The Winter's Guile is an exotic arm piece that is not meant to be used with a specific Warlock subclass, although there are some that benefit more than others. We'll talk about those when the time comes. The exotic perk is called Warlord's Sigil. When you eliminate enemies with melee attacks, you gain stacks of Warlord's Sigil. Each stack will increase your melee damage. Let's take a look at the duration first. Warlord's Sigil lasts for 5 seconds, even though when you hit an enemy with the attack, you'll see the number 4 displayed. That's because the countdown begins at 5 seconds, so you never see that number displayed. Every time you get a melee kill with an active stack, it will restore the duration, so increasing it back up to 5 seconds. You cannot increase this duration further than the 5-second max from the previous melee attack. Let's take a look at the damage increases next. With 0 stacks of the Winter's Guile buff, you will deal base melee damage, obviously. Each stack afterwards will increase your damage by 1.5 times the previous damage. So the base to these enemies is 236. With 1 stack, we multiply it by 1.5, gives us 354. You can follow that pattern for every single step, all the way up to 5 stacks, giving us 1,792 damage. In addition to this, you can also deal critical damage. The critical damage will multiply your damage by 2 times. So to these enemies, we'll deal 3,584 damage on a 5-stack critical melee attack. That amounts to about 15.18 times the base melee damage, a huge increase. Although you can see the increase in melee damage with every subclass in skill tree, there are 2 subclasses in trees that benefit more than the others. The first one we'll talk about is the Voidwalker Attunement of Hunger skill tree, and the skills we'll be talking about are Devour, which allows you to restore your health after killing an enemy with a melee attack, as well as Insatiable, which increases the duration of Devour every time you kill an additional enemy. Let's take a look at how effective this can be in combat. In this example, you'll see me consume a grenade in order to restore my health and grant the Devour effect. At this point, I get melee kills in order to stack my Warlord's Sigil to 5 times, and finally, I turn my attention on the boss enemy in this lost sector, and finish him off in 2 hits at a 5-time stack. This is incredible. It's a lot of fun to use, and it deals some high damage. Although, without the Devour effect active in this situation, I absolutely would have died and been unable to perform this task. Moving on to our second subclass and skill tree that benefits from this exotic is the skill tree the Attunement of Conduction for the Stormcaller. This is a very interesting case. We're going to talk specifically about the melee ability Chain Lightning. When you hit an enemy with this melee ability, you'll chain deadly lightning to nearby enemies. Let's take a look at the effects I'm referring to. In this example, you'll see me kill 2 enemies with Chain Lightning, the initial enemy I target, as well as the one hit by the chain. You can see that I gain 2 stacks of Warlord's Sigil. This means that the Chain Lightning is treated as a melee attack as far as the Winter's Guile is concerned. That means you can stack this more effectively when you're fighting groups of enemies, as long as you're killing both of the enemies you attack. And this applies to the damage done by the Chain Lightning as well. In this example, I'm going to show you the base damage of our melee as well as our Chain Lightning to these enemies. We deal 253 damage for base and 141 for the Chain Lightning. This is 55% of the base damage, the same number we observed when we tested the Attunement of Conduction skill tree. Let's take a look at how we can increase that damage next. At 1 stack of Warlord's Sigil, we deal 379 damage for the melee attack, which is 1.5 times the base, and 211 damage on the chain. This again is about 55% of the melee damage, so it increases exactly as we would expect. However, when you get to the 5th stack's worth of damage, the numbers get a little strange. For some reason, we deal an increased amount of chain damage equivalent to as if we had 6 stacks of Warlord's Sigil activated. This is the only step in the chain in which I observe this happening. All the other steps function the same way as you would expect. However, with this one, Arcane Lightning, instead of dealing the 1055 damage we should, which would be 55% of 1918 damage at 5 stacks, Arcane deals 1598 damage. This is equivalent to what Arcane would have dealt if we were able to get 6 stacks worth of Warlord Sigil. Now this is strange for 2 reasons. First, and obviously, is that we're dealing 6 stacks worth of damage on the Chain Lightning. It shouldn't be happening, and it's odd. But what's really weird about this is that we are dealing that 6th stack of damage after we hit an enemy with the base melee attack. If you noticed, at all other levels of Chain Lightning, the damage that our Chain Lightning deals is equivalent to the stack in which we damage the enemy with first. I know that's a little confusing, but allow me to extrapolate. What I'm trying to say here is, when you hit an enemy with Chain Lightning, you kill the first enemy and gain a stack of Warlord Sigil before the second enemy is hit with the Chain Lightning. However, the damage done by that Chain Lightning is not equivalent to the additional stack you gained from the first enemy hit. So for some reason, on the 5th stack, it allows you to overstack to 6. Alright, now that the confusing stuff is out of the way, I just want to preempt some questions. The first one is in regards to your sword. If you have ammo in the sword, you will not see any benefit from using Winter's Guile. If you kill enemies with it, you won't gain any stacks, and if you gain stacks and switch to it, you won't see a damage increase. However, if you have no ammo in your sword and you're hitting them with the hilt, you will see a damage increase if you have active stacks, although you won't be able to gain stacks this way. This information is basically useless, because the sword without ammo in it deals less damage than a regular melee attack, it's slower, and after a couple of successive hits, you're stunned. So don't do this. The next thing I want to address is the Stormcaller Supers. One of the exotic arm pieces for the Warlock allows you to regenerate health on melee hits. If you activate Storm Trance, however, you still gain these effects while zapping enemies. This is not the case with Winter's Guile. And the final thing I want to address is the melee abilities that the Warlock has. No other melee ability besides Chain Lightning has a direct benefit to using Winter's Guile. So the Dawnblade, for example, does not see an increase in burn damage when using Winter's Guile with active stacks. The same goes for Bloom for the Voidwalker. And now that this is all out of the way, I want to move on to a direct damage comparison. For those of you who have watched my breakdown videos, you know that I compare super damages against the Modular Mind, so we have a constant in order to compare them directly with each other. I'm going to do the same here with Winter's Guile, so we can see just how much damage we can do against boss enemies. By strategically using Devour here, I'm able to keep myself alive while I gain stacks of Warlord Sigil. At times 5, I turn my attention over to the Mind, and you can see that we deal 1,886 damage per melee attack to the Mind. In this example, I only managed 3 attacks because I was a little bit slow and whiffed on my last one. However, 4 attacks is absolutely possible, bringing the possible total to 7,544 damage. This number is astronomically high, especially when you consider the damage that other supers will deal. Specifically, the Vortex super that this skill tree has access to will deal less damage than 4 melee attacks at a 5-time stack. Now that all the fancy numbers are out of the way, let's go over my opinion on this exotic. I'll only be talking about its uses in PvE, because I don't think you should be using this in PvP very often. In PvE, the bottom line with this exotic is that it's fun to use, but not very effective when you consider higher level content. Specifically, you're kind of pigeonholed here into only playing as the Attunement of Hunger skill tree, because although you'll see some benefits by using the other classes, the only way to keep yourself alive, especially when fighting higher leveled enemies, is to use Devour in order to regenerate your health. Unfortunately, that limits you to how you can play the game, which isn't all that great for an exotic, but that's kind of the point here. The exotic changes the way that you have to play the game, which makes it, in my opinion, an exotic in nature and spirit. Whether or not it's effective depends on your mileage as a player and how you'll be able to utilize it in certain situations. I found my time with Winter's Guile to be enjoyable, especially during public events where I can just pop Devour and run around and punch everything like a psychopath, knowing that I'll kill everything in just about one hit. You can even stunlock certain boss enemies with this melee attack at a 5-time stack. You can see in the clip that I'm showing that I managed to stunlock the Glimmer Extraction boss and just punch him to death. That's good fun, and that's the real point of exotics. So if you manage to get your hands on this, I'd give it a try. Maybe just leave it behind during the raid. And that's the end of this exotic breakdown and analysis. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about how I conducted the tests, or why I might not have included other footage, please let me know in the comments so I could answer them for you. In my next video, I'm going to be performing a breakdown for the exotic weapon, the Skyburner's Oath. I was going to cover the Wardcliff coil first, but considering a new glitch has been discovered, I'm willing to bet that the weapon's fundamental ammo mechanics are going to be changing soon. So I don't want to cover it and then end up with out-of-date information for all the people who might be looking for a breakdown on the Wardcliff. As per usual, I'll be going live on Twitch in about a half hour after this video releases. I have to restart my hunter, so I'll be doing that live on stream and playing through the story today. You're welcome to jump in, ask me any questions you like, or just hang out. We always have a good time. You can find the link to my Twitch channel in this video's description, as well as a link to our Discord server and Patreon. Anyone is welcome to join the Discord server, and it's good fun. You can talk about whatever you'd like. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope I see you next time, and good luck getting through the exclusion zone.